in their own way, and now here's the peer-to-peer regulation, and then some people will comply, some people won't, and that's what happened in the US. That Prosper and Lending Club started to grow quite rapidly, and then the SEC came in and said, actually, you're in breach of all securities laws, and they shut down Prosper, and Lending Club voluntarily suspended operations until they figured out how they were going to comply. New Zealand very early on came in with bespoke peer-to-peer lending regulation, and I think crowdfunding as well. And Australia's only come very late to the piece with crowdfunding regulation, and still hasn't provided peer-to-peer. So what I'd say is, you kind of have to work with what the existing law and regulation is, because you've got no choice, even if it doesn't work the best for your particular business. But you have to have an eye for the regulatory risk that at some point, if your market grows large enough, the regulator's going to take an interest and ultimately, put in place some bespoke regulation that could fundamentally affect your business model and viability.
Yeah, both of you are impacted by regulation one way or the other. Any comments on regulation and where it's going and what's happening?
Look, I think we've got to... We've definitely had a change in the wind in terms of encouraging the entrepreneurial mindset in Australia. That's a very good thing. I think that the changes announced in December as part of the Innovation Australia moves are great. We need to see more of it. As our crowd and Monash Private Capital, we always operate within the regulatory framework. It doesn't mean that we don't have strategic conversations with regulators around things which we think they should think about considering. When the global CEO of our crowd came out to Australia first, probably about 3.5 years ago, we were lucky that Malcolm Turnbull was the Minister of Communications at the time, and we spent a bit of time with him there, and so he knows John, and we've kind of given our input on things. Doesn't mean that everything we've wished for has come through, but we kind of see things working in the right direction. I think that more than regulation, and the regulation should be there to protect consumers, it should be there to protect against bad business practice. But I think the biggest part of it is actually changing the broader population's mindset around tall poppies and around failure. And it's, I can say it because I'm originally from New Zealand, but I think Australians have a problem with too much success and people failing. So they like to kick people when they're down, and if they're too successful or kind of too prominent in their success, that they like to have a go, and it's pretty nasty, isn't it?
Jens.
Yes, that's true, and but not to say that there hasn't been change though. So last week ASIC just announced that at the end of the year there'll be they're trialling a 6-month regulation-free sandbox for startups, for fintech startups. And why? Because I think it comes back to what your point was earlier, Jeffrey, FOMO. Like, the government knows if they don't do anything, then Australian startups aren't going to thrive here. And we've already seen this. We've seen companies in Australia jump ship to UK or Singapore because there's more regulation-friendly environments there. Like, at the end of the day, regulation still needs to be there. Like, people need to get protected. They need to get their assets and property managed properly, and there needs to be accountability at the end of the day. But it's that balance between how much of that do you need to provide to a big organisation versus a small one. How do you help them grow in this sort of environment? And I think there are steps being taken that are positive. Do I think it's early enough or fast enough? I personally say no, but you have to work with whatever's in place.
Okay, so I think we're pretty much out of time. So I'm going to ask the last question before we wrap up. So here's the thing. It's 2020, right? It's 2020. You are the CEO of one of Australia's big 4 banks. They're still around. You're the CEO of one of Australia's big 4 banks. And in the next room is the board meeting that you're going to present to. What's the number one item on the board agenda? You've set the agenda. It's 2020. You're about to walk into the room to present to the board. What have you put as the number one item on the board agenda? Who would like to start? Simon.
We've got a $1 trillion takeover offer from Apple to buy us out completely, and I believe it's in shareholders' interest to take it because we are at the top of the cycle.
Right. Okay. That's an interesting number one item on the agenda. Who else? Who's next?
I've been speaking to my 3 competitors, and I think we should merge all of our retail branches and consolidate. Still have our back end, still do our own thing, but the retail network is nice for tea and biscuits and not much else.
Okay.
I don't know why I jumped from cash bar. That's a heck of an impression I'll be asking myself. They're launching it in there and they're growing quite quickly, which will probably get on board. That's being serious.
Okay, Richard. Are you gonna? Is this with your hat on or the IBM hat on? Which are you gonna do?
My hat. But
Your hat.
Whatever
Okay.
Tech guy's doing as CEO of one of the big 4 banks, but I was also definitely thinking around mergers and acquisitions. Given that that's traditionally how I've operated as a bank, I'll just buy my competitors. So that's what we're talking about today.
So what's the number one item?
Mergers and acquisitions. Look, going through our list of fintechs, which ones we're going to acquire.
Right. Okay. Excellent. Please join me in thanking Jens, Josh, Simon, and Richard. Please. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us how technology is changing the way that financial services are being structured, provisioned, and consumed. Please join me again in thanking James, Josh, Simon, Richard, and Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Now, the MBA class of 2017 would like to invite you to drink and link. So thank you for coming, and please join us next door.
Thank you.
This is for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was fun. Yeah, it was fun. It was really good. Yeah.